So, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to talk about our new book, Storefront NYC, Photographs of the City's Independent Shops, Past and Present. And briefly, we're going to just talk about, for those who may not be familiar, who've never come to one of our talks before, about like who James and I are and how we got started photographing these mom and pops. First we'll talk about that, and then we're going to show some slides of some wonderful mom and pop stores in the East Village that you can visit today, and we'll look back at some, sadly, that are no longer with us, but we remember fondly. But most of them are still in business today, so we can visit them and help support them, because that's what this project is really all about. It's supporting these wonderful small mom and pop shops. So James and I, as Jeff mentioned, are East Village residents. And we've actually lived in the same apartment in the East Village for over 25 years now. But it wasn't our own neighborhood of what prompted us to start photographing these mom and pop stores. Because to us, I mean, the stores are super important. Like, we photographed ones tucked away on narrow side streets that probably maybe you've never heard of, like especially in the outer boroughs, to historic institutions on big major avenues like Katz's and Russ and Daughters on Houston Street that probably many people have heard about. Nearly half of the stores that are in this book, sadly, have gone out of business. But the silver lining, which I like to think of it is that half are still present. And we felt it was important to not only pay homage to the ones that are still in business, but also look back at the ones that we've lost over the years, because the main reason why James and I started photographing these mom and pop stores is we began to notice they were disappearing. We were photographing the city streets in the 1990s for an entirely different project. It was all about its street culture. And we were roaming around the different neighborhoods, mostly in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. Like I said, it really wasn't our own neighborhood. But we began to notice that these small stores were closing. And somehow the neighborhood didn't look the same anymore, it didn't feel the same anymore. Like, we would go back after only like a few months had passed, and then we'd be like, wait a minute, what happened to that small store that was there, on the corner? We went in there, it was a candy store, we got a pack of gum, the owner was super nice, and then we're like, wait a minute, it's gone, and it just didn't have the same like attraction, I guess you could say, to us that it did when it was present. So a light bulb kind of went off in our heads, and we said, you know what, let's start taking photographs of these mom and pop stores, because it seems like it's important to document them, because they may not be around tomorrow. And this was all with 35mm film, because going back to the 1990s, there was no digital camera. I mean, we didn't even, did we have a cell phone then?
No.
Well, I guess maybe we had a cell phone. I guess it made calls.
No.
It's probably like a little flip phone or
Yeah,
one
Motorola.
One of those things. It didn't have any internet connectivity, that's for sure. And we just amassed a large collection of them. We weren't sharing them with anybody. We weren't doing anything with anybody. We were just keeping them for ourselves. It was a very personal project, really like a labor of love. And what ended up happening is we amassed this huge collection. We were putting out a book on graffiti art. Our publisher, who's based out of California, came over our apartment, and he's like, oh, what are those pictures on the wall you got? And I'm like, oh, there's these small stores, you're not going to be interested because you're from California. Like, why would he be interested in a little mom and pop store? He's never going to go to it. He's flying out the next morning. And he's like, no, that's interesting. He's like, do you have more of them? And I'm like, oh, more. I'm like, oh, we got, shoe boxes full of photos, and we also have interviews with the owners. He's like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, well, not only would we go in and talk to the owners and find out the history, but we would find out all these interesting facts and figures about, like, why the business started, like, was it a family-owned business? How much was the rent? Like, we would ask them very, very, very pointed questions, because we were curious of, like, why they were still in business where another one was closing. And to us, we found out like the neighborhood store has always been like a foothold for new immigrants, and we're a lifeline for the community where culture and food, like from your home, were present. And we're like, wow, these are so super important, like more than like we even realized when we started taking the photo. And speaking to the owners who had such like great stories to share about the joys and struggles of owning, often like a family-owned business, it really prompted us to keep on going with the project and keep on photographing them. And also, it wasn't even ones that have closed, but sometimes we'd come across stores that like were remodeled. You know, like the store would be old, but they would reface the facade. So it had a new sign, or it had new, you know, like instead of run down old paint, they would like put marble or something like that on the outside of the columns, and they'd make it look like extra, like nice and fancy. But to us, we kind of liked the old like broken down, peeling paint allure. And also like all the products that they would have like jumbled in the window. We really love that. In fact, if you dim the lights now, just so they can see the slides, I think that would be great. I can explain why we chose the cover to our book, Storefront NYC. This is Visio Bakery, which is not in the East Village. It's on Prince Street in Soho. But when we took this photo, this was in the early 2000s, we had been going to this bakery for quite some time, and the reason why we stopped at this bakery is that we fell in love with the bread in the window. We're like, oh, look at that bread in the window. What is that round one with the braids? And we were curious about it, not to mention the smell wafting from the bakery itself, because they had a coal-fired oven in their basement, and that's where they did all the baking. And the reason we chose this as the cover, it's an interesting story. It's in business again today, but not as an Italian bread bakery. It is a bakery again. They're not using the coal-fired oven. They actually bake off-site, but the exterior is landmarked. Because it's in a landmarked area, they cannot change the facade. So it's still painted like a green. It's a slightly different hue than in this photo. It's a little lighter now. And they do keep bread in the window, but it's not Italian bread. It's just like everyday, different types of bread that they sell. They do have a nice prosciutto bread, which is the one that James and I fell in love with. Has like the flecks of prosciutto in it. Like we call it lard bread, was like the term that Visio Bakery used. I mean, that's kind of fallen out of favor to call anything lard bread. I mean, that sounds very unhealthy, but it was extra good. And then the reason why it was so good is that it would keep for a long time, because the prosciutto like acted as a kind of a natural preservative, and you know, it would keep like, you know, on your counter for a while, or you could put it in the freezer and then you know, thaw it out when you were ready to eat it. But we fell in love with that bread in the window. And we finally took a photo of the bakery in the 2000s. If you go to the next slide, we're going to start talking about the East Village shops. This is Russo's, and Russo's is one of the places that you can visit today. It's located on East 11th Street by First Avenue. It's between 1st and 2nd, but closer to First Avenue. And we also, when we initially began this project, it was all about the visual aesthetics of the store. Just like Vesuvio, like we liked the cheery green color, and it was painted in like, just like this one, kind of like the Italian flag colors with the red and the green and the white, and the window display. As you see, jam-packed with hams, Italian cheeses, and they updated the signage. It used to have like it hand-painted. I think that's more of like a stick-on letter that they use now, but it used to have homemade mozzarella and pasta. It was hand-painted by hand, but it's been in business since 1908. And this is our, James and I's go-to spot. I mean, we live only a few blocks away, and we literally go there at least once a week to get their amazing mozzarella. It's owned by Jack Cangemi, and he took it over from his great uncle Savino and aunt Rosalind, and They began across the street from where they are located now. They were originally founded on East 11th Street, but where the public school is located now. What happened was the city came by, and because of eminent domain, they said, guys, we know you have this lovely store, but we're going to build a school at this spot, so we're going to be tearing down your building, you have to move. Luckily, they found a spot across the street, but they were not able to buy the building. They wanted to remain on the street, but they couldn't buy the building, so they're actually renting. People think, oh, well, they've been in business since 1908. You see that on the storefront. But this is a store that they definitely do not own the building they're located in. That being said, they have a very kind and nice landlord, but you never know that that situation could change. Because one of the things that we found out when speaking to these mom and pop store owners is the #1 reason why small businesses close is because they do not own the building that they're located in, and the rent gets too high. And we're going to talk about some of the examples, sadly, of some businesses which were forced to close because of huge rent increases. But we encourage you to visit Russo's because it's just an amazing, amazing taste of Italy. They make their own homemade mozzarella every single day in the basement. And you can see in the photo that little trap door going down to the basement. There's stairs. That's where they make their mozzarella every single day. And like on a busy day, they'll make it 2 or 3 times a day. So, depending how busy, they'll just keep on making it throughout the day. Usually it's a guy named Jimmy that's making it. He's like the longtime manager. He's learned the proper way to make mozzarella. It's not as easy as you would think. We've live streamed him doing it. I've even had a chance to try it myself, and it's a lot of stretching and a lot of working it, but it's just tastes amazing. They used to smoke their own mozzarella in front of the store using barrels, and that was many, many moons ago. Of course, the city does not allow that anymore, but they still sell smoked mozzarella as well, but they don't do that on site. And they're also known for their pasta. When they opened in 1908, the East Village had a pretty sizable Italian population. People don't realize that. Like, they think of, okay, Little Italy of Manhattan is in the Lower East Side, centered around Mulberry Street, but the East Village had a very large Italian population at the turn of the century, in the early 1900s. And not only was there mozzarella and pasta, but right next door is an Italian bakery that's been in business since 1894, Venero's Pasticceria. We didn't include it in our book because it was in our New York Knights book because the star is their big neon sign, but they have kind of a symbiotic relationship with Russo's. People go to Russo's to get their meal, and then they get their desserts at Venero's. But Russo's makes only 2 types of pasta in the beginning in 1908, which was ravioli, either filled with meat or filled with cheese, and that was it. And there was no other fancy types. You either got that ravioli, got their homemade mozzarella, and walked out the door. Over the years, they've expanded. Now they sell even gluten-free ravioli, vegan, like the vegan cheese-filled ravioli. You name it, they've got it. During the holidays, they'll do, like for Thanksgiving, they have like a pumpkin and sage ravioli, and they always have great seasonal specials. They also sell their own sauces, so literally you can go in there and have everything for your Italian meal all set. The sauces are made using their Rosalind, the great aunt's, the present owner's great aunt's original family recipe that she brought from Naples, Italy. And Jack also opened up 2 stores for you guys who might live, I don't know if everyone lives in the East Village. They have a store on 5th Avenue and 7th Avenue, like in the Park Slope area of Brooklyn too. That's where Jack ended up moving when their family was forced out of their building across the street. But Jack told us that, God forbid, if the landlord ever raises the rent and their storefront where they are now, that he would just be forced to close, because really the only reason why they're surviving today is because of their long-term customer base, and because they have that symbiotic relationship with Venero's right next door, where people go to get their delicious cheesecakes and cannolis. He's like, if I had to relocate to someplace else in the East Village, not only would it be expensive rent, if he was forced out of where he was, but he wouldn't get that symbiotic relationship with Venero's anymore. He's like, really, no block, I couldn't relocate even to First Avenue. It wouldn't make any sense to me. So we encourage you to visit Russo's. It's just a really, really wonderful, wonderful
Great
shop.
sandwich.
Yes, James, thank you for reminding me. If you want a great lunch, this is like our little hack. You can go and get one of their big heroes. It's big enough to share. They're $13.99 no matter what you have, whether you want it with meat, they have prosciutto one. We like their caprese, which is just mozzarella, their fresh mozzarella, and it's served with roasted peppers, which they also sell by the pound, because they make their own roasted peppers, and delicious sun-dried tomatoes, which they also make themselves, and a little bit of balsamic vinegar, olive oil, and it's extra, extra, extra good. So next slide. I figured you probably are very hungry now, so we'll not do any food for this next slide. This is Block Drugstore. Block Drugstore has been in business since 1885, and it's located on the corner of 2nd Avenue and East 6th Street. And when it was founded, it was actually a chain drugstore. There was a whole series of block drugstore chains in the 1920s, and that's when the neon sign was installed. So it's a really old neon sign. And the block drugstore became independent in 1942, and the present owner, his name is Carmine Palermo Jr. His father was the pharmacist working for block drugstores. And when they went independent, he bought the business, and it became his own pharmacy. Carmine Jr., who's working there now, started working there when he was 17 years old as a storefront clerk. And he followed in his father's footsteps, and he got his pharmaceutical license, so he's a licensed pharmacist. And his wife Beth is there as well. And it's really a family-owned drugstore. There's very, very few of them left in New York City. And it is our drugstore, meaning James and I go there for our prescription and drugstore needs. And I think it's the only drugstore in New York, in Manhattan at least, that has a sign that says drugstore. It's even around the corner, is you can't see it because it's cut off. This is a straight on photo, but the sign wraps around so that there's a side view of it. It's on our Instagram. I did a little video, a short video reel where you can see it as well. It looks especially great at night in the rain. That's when I took that video, because it just illuminates the whole block. But just the fact of drugstore, it just kind of came out of favor. Now you'll call it a pharmacy or, Walgreens, I don't know, a health center, whatever they want to call it now. They don't call them drugstores anymore. But that's one of the reasons why we fell in love with the sign. Plus the neon. I mean, James and I are big fans of neon. When we started this project, and it was all about the visual of the facade, we were always attracted to the neon signs, because they are disappearing kind of signage in New York City, because they don't allow neon signs to just be put up anywhere. It used to be that if you wanted a business, you could put up a neon sign. Now, if you are starting a business in New York City and you want a neon sign, it has to be in the designated neighborhood that allows neon signs, number one. Number two, it has to be a certain size, and it can't be overwhelmingly big. This would be way too big by the current standards of sizes that are allowable. It also can't overhang from the building. That's not the problem here, but like in the case of Venero's on East 11th Street, which is right next door to Russo's, that sign is what they call grandfathered in. It's so old, it hangs out a couple of feet from the facade of the building. The new law, I think, is can't hang out more than 14 to 16 inches from the facade of the building if you're allowed to have a permit for a neon sign. Plus, you have to pay extra to the city to have a neon sign. It's called an illuminated sign permit. So all these reasons, plus that they're out in the weather, and they often, every time it rains, Carmine, sometimes the transformers will go out. He has to call a repairman and have it fixed. So it's kind of a labor of love, like very costly to maintain, costly for the city, for the extra fees that you have to pay every year. And that's the reason why you don't see that many neon signs in New York City anymore. So it's a particularly, I mean, I can't extol the virtues of this. This is kind of like, I guess you could say, our Monet has his haystack where he paints it, you know, like in the day, on a rainy day, on a sunny day. He painted in the snow, he painted it like in all the seasons. This would be our go-to. Like, I can't tell you how many times we photographed it in every season and in every weather, like snow piled up, or like on the channels of the neon when there's a snowstorm. It's just like our, I guess you could say, yeah, definitely our haystack of the East Village. Carmine also is the sweetest, most kindest person. I can't tell you how many times James and I have been there waiting to pick up a prescription, and somebody will come in and they're picking up, say, like a necessary heart medication or something like that's keeping them alive, and they don't have the money to pay for their medicine. And Carmine will say to them, "Don't worry, when you get your check next week, you'll pay me. Take the medicine, go home, relax, feel better, don't stress." And I can say for sure that there's no way that Duane Reade or Walgreens, Rite Aid, or any of the chain pharmacies are going to do that for their customers. That just shows you like how much he cares. I mean, that's why the storefronts really are all, to us, they act as like ad hoc community centers. It's not only a social place where you can talk to like the owner, talk to other people that are waiting in line, but they generally care about the community and they give back, and Carmine does that and then some. He also has a wonderful old scale. If you go inside there, they have this wonderful old cabinetry in where Carmine is set up, like where they would keep all the old pills. He has like old mortar and pestle, like when they used to like, you know, hand chop and formulate medicines for people. But he has an old scale that you put in a nickel and it weighs you. And it still works, it's very accurate. He saves all the nickels from all the people that use the scale and weigh themselves, and he gives kids on Halloween the money that he's collected from the nickels. You know, he wraps them in like a little baggie, and he'll just evenly distribute how much money he made during the year of nickels to the kids instead of giving them candy because he wants to promote good health. I mean, it's just all these, I can go on and on and on and on about all the great things that Carmine has done for the community and the great person that he is. But if you need a pharmacist, Carmine's your man, Black Drugstore.
And they
So,
give free glass, like I bring them my old reading glasses and they turn them into glasses that they give to people. Just saying
That's
that.
perfect.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they used to have a little next door to them. Now it's a coffee shop. They used to have a little eyeglass shop as well. So yeah, that just shows you case in point of how generous and giving Carmine is.
Remember
And-
we asked him why, how's he dealing with Rite Aid and all that?
Oh, yes, because James and I have been residents of the East Village so long. James, thank you. See, he's contributing, but pipes in from time to time. When we noticed that...
The scale's about 10 or 20 pounds heavy, for me anyway.
Walgreens and, because there's like literally, I mean, Walgreens, there's one on First Avenue,
Yes,
there's one
CVS.
on 14th, there's one on First Avenue by 14th, there's one on, another Walgreens on the corner, that's a Duane Reade on the corner of 3rd Avenue and 14th.
First and
There's-
Fifth. Yeah.
There's a CVS also on First Avenue. I mean, there's so many different a chain. Rite Aid is down the block on First Avenue. There's so many chain stores that opened up. When they first started opening in the neighborhood, we said to Carmine, like, oh my God, we're so worried. We're really worried about you. How's everything going? And he's like, you know what? I'm doing okay, because at first I lost a lot of customers because they thought they were going to get cheaper prices, and they liked the longer hours that the Walgreens had. You know, the Walgreens, no, the CVS on First Avenue is open 24 hours. I mean, he can't compete with that. He's a family-owned shop, you know, he has to sleep, and he's just running it by himself. He's the only pharmacist there. He doesn't have a team of pharmacists. And he's like, well, at first I lost a lot of customers, but they had such terrible customer service, and they got their prescriptions messed up, and all these things that I ended up getting every customer that I lost back, and then some, because they started recommending the great customer service that I was providing them to their other friends, as well as doctors that would recommend them, that he's even got busier. And he said when people move away, that he mails them their prescriptions to like California, Florida, like he does that for them because they love him so much. They don't want to go, you know, because oftentimes when you move out of New York, there isn't a mom and pop pharmacy, so you're forced to go to a chain pharmacy. They don't want to give up that great customer service. I mean, that goes the same too. Like, there's been times where we go with a medicine, and he's just like, oh wait, you shouldn't be on this medicine. You're taking this, and this has, you know, this could react well. I'm going to call your doctor now and let me talk to him, and maybe he'll, you know, let him change it, and then I'll fill that one. So anyway, that's the customer service that Carmine provides. So next slide. Veselka, back to food. We hope you're hungry. Veselka is located on 2nd Avenue on the corner of 10th Street. And it is a Ukrainian soul food diner. It's been in business since 1954, but it didn't start as Ukrainian soul food diner. It actually started as a newsstand. And they sold newspapers, candy, you know, little toys for kids. And it was founded by Vladimir Darmashel. He was a Ukrainian immigrant. And he always had Ukrainian food in the back because he would hang out with his cronies and eat pierogies and borscht. And what happened was, Tom Bouchard was dating Vladimir Darmashel, the owner's daughter. And he was in college at the time in New Jersey. And he started working for Mr. Darmashel just to earn some extra money. Sadly, Mr. Darmashel suddenly passed away, and Tom Bouchard was basically left with this business that he didn't know what to do with because it wasn't doing well at the time. This was like in the 1970s. And Tom had the epiphany that he would change the business in order to get it to succeed, is to focus on the food, because he believed, even though he wasn't Ukrainian himself, he believed that the future of the business was in its food, because he just felt so like, you know, like much love, like when he was eating this Ukrainian food. And he took a chance. He tore out, there used to be like payphone booths in the back of the shop. He tore out the payphone booths and he put in some tables, and he hired some more Ukrainian women from the neighborhood to cook. And what happened was Mimi Sheridan, who was the New York Times food critic, came in and ate at Veselka, and she put it in the paper, in the Times, and she gave it a very positive review. And that put Veselka on the map. And from that day forward, all they've done is concentrate on their food. The third generation owner, Jason Bouchard, has joined the business. He was instrumental in making Veselka open 24 hours a day. However, during the pandemic, they were forced to scale back their hours, and still today in 2023, they are no longer open 24 hours a day. It was one of the few places that's open 24 hours a day. We'll talk about another one, but right now, only on the weekends. They're open kind of late, but they're not open 24 hours a day. But they have 4 full-time women that go in every single day and make 4,000 pierogies every day. That's their specialty. They make 5,000 gallons of borscht every year and sell 3,000 they're up to, 3,000 potato pancakes every week. And they also have a team making the borscht. And the pierogies, you think that it's very easy, but James and I have not live streamed because it's down in the basement, but we've done a recorded video where we watched all the women making the pierogies, and they asked if I wanted to give it a try, and I tried to make the pierogies. And when we put them in the boiling water, they all it was a disaster. They all came apart, like the fillings all came out. I didn't, have the proper pinching method. Like, it looks deceptively easy to make these little, they're like little dumplings, but it's amazingly difficult. But I highly recommend, go to Veselka, get yourself borscht in the cold weather like today. Nothing beats borscht. Their pierogies, they even have vegetarian options too, which is really, really nice. But they get all their meat from another small business, which is in our book. We're going to talk about it in the slideshow because we simply don't have a lot of time, but it's called the East Village Meat Market, but that's where they get all their kielbasa from as well.
And they don't own the building.
Right. Veselka is another one that they don't own the building that they're located in. Interestingly enough, it's owned by the Ukrainian Boy Scouts. And when Tom Richard told us that, I envisioned these little boys in little green outfits or blue or whatever color they wear. I would imagine blue because maybe for the Ukrainian flag. But this is how I pictured it. I'm like, these little boys own this building? I'm like, that's crazy. And he's like, no, they're not boys. Ukrainian Boy Scouts is like when you're a Boy Scout, you're a Boy Scout for life. And it's a lot of older members. There's young boys too. But they have a relationship with the Burchards because the founder of Veselka, Vladimir Darmashel, was a member of the Ukrainian Boy Scouts. And they actually have it written in their deed that Veselkas can stay there for as long as they want. That being said, the Burchards have said, I don't want to jinx it and talk about it too much. Even though it's written in the deed, there's always red tape, God forbid, but for now, we don't have to worry. They're even expanding to an adjacent storefront down the way just because the business is doing so well, which I'm happy to say. Just a wonderful, wonderful place. So next slide. Now I'm going to talk about, sadly, a business that is no longer with us. This is Gem Spa. You can see I'm wearing the t-shirt from it. Sadly, this is a victim of the pandemic, of why they were forced to close. It was founded by Ruby Silverstein and his partner, Mr. Shepard, in the 1940s. And it is said to be the birthplace of the egg cream, the quintessential Lower East Side drink. And even though the name egg cream implies that it has egg and cream in it, it does not. It's actually a drink made of really cold milk, flavored syrup, and seltzer water. And Gem Spa, when it was open, on a good busy night, this is, when I interviewed the Patel family who owned it in the 2000s, would sell 70 egg creams per night. It's a really famous place for egg creams. Jack Kerouac used to get his egg creams here. Many, many musicians, because this was I guess the Times Square of the East Village, because at the time there was the Electric Circus, the Fillmore East, CBGB's was around the corner on Bowery. This was the meeting spot where a lot of musicians that were playing at these venues would hang out, meet before a venue, afterwards. And the New York Dolls actually used their posing in front of Gem Spa for the back cover of their debut album in 1973. Also, Basquiat has a painting, Gem Spa. The poets Allen Ginsberg and Ted Berrigan also mention Gem Spa in their poems. But the funny thing is about the egg cream is we're not sure if it's invented here. That's what they say. I mean, it's not written in stone. Maybe it was in a different spot in the Lower East Side, but I like to think of it that it was invented here. But there's a funny story that was told to me of why it was called an egg cream, because it doesn't contain eggs, it doesn't contain cream, and there's two reasons behind it, and there's like, I guess you could go either way with which one, but I like to say that it was called egg cream because it's the anglicized version of the Yiddish word for pure sweetness, echt Kiem. I guess it's like off of German, Yiddish, but like a German roots, echt Kiem, pure sweetness. Or some people say it's called an egg cream because of the egg white like foam that rises to the top of the cup when you create an egg cream. The Gem Spa was forced out of business because of A, the rent got too high, and B, it was really a victim of the pandemic. Sadly, the community tried to rally around to save it, and that's when they made these T-shirts, and they had other, I have a scarf, they had hats, and all sorts of things that they were trying to, drum up business, but it sadly didn't work. The good thing is that in the corner, in its place, is another independent store. It's an independent coffee shop. So even though I miss Gem Spa, at least I can say, well, it's not a bank taking over the corner, because oftentimes that's what happens is these places close and they get replaced by either a banking institution or a chain store or like a Starbucks coffee shop. So it's Poetica Coffee, and I'm happy that that at least it's not remaining empty.
Oh, just tell them about the name.
Oh, the name, yeah. A lot of people said, oh yes, how did they come up with the name Gem Spa? And it used to be called, when it was originally opened in the 1940s, Gems Spa. It actually had an S. It was J-E-M-S and then Spa.
G, yeah, G.
Gems. And the reason the owners picked that name is the G stands for Gladys, the E stands for Etta, and the M stands for Miriam. And Gladys and Etta were the owner's wife and ex-wife, and Miriam was the first initial of the partner's wife, and then the S was for Silverstein Shepherd, because the owners' last names were Silverstein and Shepherd. And then the Spa, because where did they get that from, came because Mr. Silverstein fought in World War II, and he was stationed in Europe, and he fell in love with the European spa. He used to go to spas all the time and sit there in a bath, and he loved the spa experience, so that's how he came up with the name. Very, very, very odd, but a funny story. And this is, I think, one of the oldest photos that is in our book. This is from 2001. When they closed, it didn't even look like this. They had refronted yet again. It was slightly different in appearance.
They had Zoltar.
Right, they had a Zoltar, not your face on a sticker machine. And they didn't have any more newspapers out front, because nobody bought newspapers, sadly, when they closed during the pandemic. I think they were down to maybe getting three New York Times. That's all they would order, on a Sunday for the Sunday Times. They used to be, there used to be piles of them. It was, I don't know, maybe a few dozen they would have stacked up, especially on the weekend. So next slide. Trash and Vaudeville. Trash and Vaudeville is thankfully still in business, but this is its original location. It was forced to move because of a rent increase. This is their original location on St. Mark's Place. It actually was located, founded in 1975 by Ray Goodman. It was located in the historic Hamilton Holly House, which is a landmark building that Alexander Hamilton purchased the building in 1833 after the Civil War ended, and then it became used as a meeting hall. Ray Goodman, the owner, told me when we interviewed him that the reason why he decided to open up on St. Mark's is that he just fell in love with the block, that he had felt like the rock and roll vibe, that he felt like the energy of the block itself. And then it made perfect sense when he wanted to open up his store, which originally sold both vintage and new clothing. It was originally just upstairs, and then as it became more popular, a lot of musicians, famous musicians, shop there. And Ray Goodman invented the black skinny jeans, basically. He was the first place in New York City to not only sell black skinny jeans, which a lot of musicians that were performing at CBGB's would come and buy, and I guess by the truckload. I don't know how many pairs they bought, but he said a lot. But he also was the first place where you could buy what I love as Doc Martens in New York City. It was actually the place where I bought my first pair of Doc Martens. And now there's a Doc Martens store in New York City, but they were the first place to sell both those boots and shoes from England. And we just loved Trash and Vaudeville. We loved its neon sign. We loved the fact that it was like upstairs, downstairs. And we also loved, may he rest in peace, Jimmy Webb, who was the longtime manager there. We had photographed him for our book New York Nights, standing outside, having a little cigarette break. He was standing up on the top step there. Jimmy, if you knew this place, Jimmy was like Trash and Vaudeville. He was so sweet to everyone, even though many famous musicians would come in there and get their outfits. I mean, you know, all the members of Blondie would go in there, and I mean, even more modern day Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, you name it, they would shop in there. Bruce Springsteen actually got the shirt that he's wearing
On the cover of the River.
The River at that shop.
For free.
For free, because it was a used shirt. Ray Goodman didn't want to sell it to him because it had a hole in it, and he's like, Bruce, you don't want to wear this, but Bruce insisted, and so he just gave it to him for free.
It's like 1979.
Yeah. You know, another funny story. Like I said, all these stories are just from us spending time with the owners and talking to them and finding out. But Jimmy Webb, the longtime manager, treated everybody the same. Like, you could go in there, and there could be a famous musician shopping there, and he wouldn't just pay attention to the musician. He would pay attention to you as just as an important customer. And he would treat you like rock royalty, even if you weren't. And we always appreciated that about him. Sadly, Ray Goodman did not own the building. He was a minority partner in the building, but he did not own it. But every time they wanted to increase the rent, he had to pay an increased rent. And that's why he finally had to move in 2016. They relocated to East 7th Street. So it's still in business today, but we felt strongly that we wanted to include the original location because for us and our memories of the store are mostly associated with this St. Mark's location. Okay, next slide. Back to food. Hope you're hungry again. B&H Dairy, the most lovely little hole in the wall, coffee shop / diner / luncheonette. Again, a funny name. B&H, you see Better Health, that's a newer way of calling B&H. B&H was actually founded as a Jewish dairy restaurant in 1938 by 2 Jewish immigrants, and their last names were Bergson and Heller. So they used their first initials of their last name, B&H, for Bergson and Heller. In more recent years, because this is a more recent sign, it didn't have Better Health. The Better Health was added because now it's vogue to have a vegetarian restaurant, but in the beginnings, it was all about keeping code with the Jewish dietary laws, because this was a place that didn't serve meat. In the Jewish dietary laws, when you're kosher, you can't mix meat with dairy and fish. So B&H only sold dairy and fish. And still to this day, even though it's not owned by Jewish immigrants anymore, in fact, it's not owned by anybody Jewish at all, I'm going to tell you about who it's owned by in a second, they still adhere to the Jewish dietary laws. It's the the rabbi comes in once a week to give his blessings and to check that everything is up to snuff. They serve amazing, amazing blintzes. I can't even tell you how delicious they are. But tuna salad, whitefish salad, matzah brie, you name it, reasonable prices. And the owners now, in a strange twist of fate from being a Jewish dairy restaurant, are a Egyptian Muslim named Fawzi Adalwad and his lovely wife, Ola, who is a Polish woman, a Catholic Polish woman. It's a funny story of how they met. Fawzi had purchased the business, and Ola was working across the street at Stage Restaurant, which is also in a book. It's not in our slideshow today. It's sadly a business that's no longer around anymore, but it was right next to the Orpheum Theater. That's why they called it Stage Restaurant. But Ola used to take breaks from working at Stage and used to come across the street, and I guess she started like flirting, or Fawzi started flirting with her, if you ask, Ola's side of the story. And they started dating, and once they got married, Ola obviously quit her job at Stage and came to work at B&H. She said, oh my God, I had to relearn everything I learned as a young girl growing up in Poland. I would always cook everything with meat. And now I'm in a dairy restaurant. I knew how to make pierogies, but I knew how to make borscht, but I had to make it with meat. So I had to adapt some of my recipes, use the recipes that were handed down from the Bergson and Hellers, and still adhere to the kosher dietary rules. But she does a great job. She's just a wonderful person. She's always a smile on her face. Again, just like Carmine Palermo, just like so many of the owners that we're talking about, really cares about the community. They struggled to survive during the pandemic. I mean, sadly, they got broken into. They broke their window. They stole a cash register during the pandemic. We helped them with a GoFundMe campaign to meet some of their costs. Really struggled. Again, they don't own the building that they're located in, but I can't begin to tell you a wonderful place to eat. And Ola's she's usually only there until like maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but they are open for dinner as well. Okay, next slide. Oh yeah, we've moved on from, well, you can eat in here too, but mainly a drinking spot. McSorley's Old Ale House. In business since 1854. And this is located on East 7th Street by Cooper Square. And it was originally an all-male establishment, known by its slogan, good ale, raw onions, and no ladies. It was actually the last place in New York City, last bar, to not admit women. And it's funny because the McSorley family was actually very against admitting women. They just didn't want women in their bar. They thought that it would ruin the whole, just vibe of the bar, because it always had been an all-male establishment. And in 1960, even though the women's rights movement was coming out, they held on. In fact, they had to be taken to court, and it's the famous court case, Seidenberg versus McSorley. They lost, obviously, and it ended in McSorley's law. That's the name of the law, which prohibits the discrimination in bars, hotels, restaurants, airplanes, golf clubs, and other public accommodations. And in a funny twist of fate, because the McSorley family was so against allowing women, the Marr family, because Mr. Matthew Marr was working as a bartender at McSorley's at the time when the Seidenberg case was going on. When they lost the case, it was sold, it was just I guess a relative of the McSorley's family that had been running the bar at the time, but it was still sort of in the family. They just didn't want the bar, they didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And Matthew Marr said to us, he's like, you know what? if it wasn't for the women, I would never own this bar, because they were so frustrated that they offered the bar to me. They said, oh, I can't deal with this. We lost the case. Do you want, you know, like this is like when they got home from the court, I guess they went right back to because they lived above the bar. They owned the whole building. They said, oh, you know, I've washed my hands of this place. If you want it, it's yours. And they sold it to Mr. Matthew Marr. And that's the only reason why it didn't stay in the extended McSorley family. But Mr. Matthew Marr didn't change a thing. So if you go there today, it has the original wooden taps, the potbelly stove, which still works and warms you up really nice and toasty on a cold day like tonight. And they still serve their own homemade ale. They only serve McSorley's. It's just either light or dark. That's all you can get. There's no, you know, beers on tap. There's no, you know, big screen TVs. You're not going to go there to watch your sports. This is like a real, authentic, you know, Irish bar. If you go in there, look for, on the light fixture, like an old light fixture, look for the old turkey wishbones, which were hung by the doughboys. In World War I, they would hang up a turkey bone as a, like, I guess a wishful wish that they would return home from the war. And sadly, the ones that are still up on the bar are all the men who didn't make it home. But that's, you know, just something to look for. There's all sorts of memorabilia in there. There's an old poster, wanted poster from the assassination of Lincoln. You know, I could go on and on. It's like it's a virtual museum, but a lovely place. They do serve food, crackers and cheese and onions. I think they have a good burger too, although I can't say I've ever had the burger from there, but I've had their cheese and crackers. They're really nice to our dog Hudson. He usually plops himself on the barrel because he likes to jump up high, and he'll sit there and he waits for them to bring him some cheese and crackers.
And liverwurst.
And liverwurst, that's right. They have the plates of liverwurst too. Last but not least, Ray's Candy Store. We couldn't not include Ray's because he's literally right out the door. You can go visit him because I'm sure he's there. Ray's Candy Store was founded in 1974. It's on Avenue A, just at the other corner of Tompkins Square Park. So we're on the 10th Street side, so it's the other side of the park. He's right there by the corner. And Ray bought this business in 1974 after he saved enough money working different jobs when he jumped ship as an Iranian soldier. His boat was coming into port in New York, and before it landed, he literally dove off the ship into the water and swam to his new home. And he called himself Ray Alvarez because he wanted to fit in, but his real name is Asghar Garaman, I think I'm saying it right. And he adopted the name Ray Alvarez. He became a U.S. citizen. He's very proud. He has it up on the wall. He'll show you. He got his U.S. citizenship, I guess it was a number of years ago now, maybe like a dozen or so years ago. But he's such a kind, nice, sweet man. He's in his 90s now. And the most generous person that you could ever imagine. Just like Carmine Palermo at Block, he gives back to the homeless. I mean, he's worked the night shift basically, you know, his whole life there at the store. He was there when there's Tent City in Tompkins Square. He was there during the Tompkins Square riots. James and I were coming by the park, because we always walk our dog along the edge of the park, and we went in to see Ray a few years ago. It was Thanksgiving Eve. I'll never forget, because it was really, really cold, kind of like it is tonight. And we stopped in there to get a coffee and a hot dog for our dog Hudson. And a woman had been waiting online. They always give away free turkeys at Thanksgiving to the homeless and the needy at the park. And she was waiting on this long line for turkey. She went in, she left the line, somebody was holding her space just to get a cup of coffee because she was so cold. And she didn't have enough money to pay for the coffee. And Ray's like, don't worry, honey. Just take the coffee, warm up, have a happy holiday. Please take it. In fact, take another one and another one for any of your friends that are in line. And he gave them those free coffees. And this is a man that doesn't have a lot of money himself. I mean, he struggled with rent increases. When he first opened the store in 1925, his rent was $125 a month. In 2014, he was in danger of closing because they increased his rent to $4,282.95. He gave me the exact figure. And more recently, during the pandemic, his landlord increased it again to $6,185 a month. Now, that might not seem like a lot based on rents in this neighborhood, because this neighborhood has gotten very expensive, but Ray keeps his prices really low, and it's a lot of money to Ray. So we've always helped support him. We helped support him during the pandemic. Last year, he was attacked, viciously attacked outside his store in the middle of the night. He was taking a break, and he got broke the orbit of his eye, like a bone fracture, and he had terrible bruises. He didn't even want to press charges or go to the police. That's the kind of person that he is. The community rallied around him, made him go to the hospital, and I think they eventually caught the guy. They made him press charges, but he's just such a sweet, sweet man. We encourage you, at the end of the program, go visit Ray. You can get yourself an egg cream. You can't get them at Gem Spa anymore, but you can get them from Ray. He makes an amazing egg cream, fried Oreos, vignettes, ice cream if you want to go that route and have something cold, even though it's cold out. Some people like that. You name it, he's got it. He's a heart of gold. And yeah, I mean, we can't thank you enough for listening. I wanted to give you a chance to do a little Q&A. If you guys had any questions for us, we're happy to answer them. And we also brought a couple of our books in case you want to purchase them. We'll sign them for you. They're $40 if you so desire. But questions, anybody?
We have about 5 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Anybody? Any questions?
I came a little late, so I don't know if I heard you say, well, you started doing this just for yourselves?
Yeah, it was a very personal project. We began photographing the stores because we began to notice that they were disappearing. They were closing, but it wasn't in the East Village. It was really in the outlying neighborhoods of Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and we would go to a neighborhood, and then maybe a few weeks or a few months would go by, and we'd go back again, and we began to notice, hey, this shop is closing. Somehow it doesn't look the same anymore. It doesn't feel the same anymore. I feel like in your own neighborhood, I mean, at least for us, we took a lot of small businesses for granted. We never thought even to photograph them because we thought they would always be there. Like CBGB's, for example. I mean, we included our photo of it in our book, but we didn't take that photo until the 2000s, even though we had gone there many times ourselves, because we thought it would always be there. Oh yeah, we're not worried about that. And it was all about the look and feel of the place. It was all about how the exterior looked, the facade, the hand-painted signs, the neon signs, the beautiful window displays, the bread in the window. So yeah, we weren't sharing them with anybody. This was really before social media. Now we have an Instagram account. We try to post every single day another photo. Because to us, I mean, the whole reason we started the project, and certainly the why we have our books, is we want you guys to go and support your local independent shop, because they really are the backbones of the community, and they, not only serve a purpose, for you to shop at them, but they also usually employ local people, so it goes full circle. Plus, you'll make a friend. You can talk to the owner and, get to know them, and, make a new friend in the community. I mean, I know that a lot of them, like Carmine, he's even signs for packages that for people that live above, in the building. I mean, that's just a nice thing that he doesn't have to do that, but he does. Yes.
Which book is this in your series? So you had Storefront 1, 2, is this the
Right.
third?
This is I guess you could say the fourth book on the subject of mom and pop stores. Our first book, Storefront: The Disappearing Face in New York, came out in 2008. This book includes some older photos, like CBGB's, Vesuvio, but we also included new photos never before published in any of our other books. And we also revisited many of the locations that we had photographed in the past, like B&H Dairy in our original book didn't look anything like it does today. They refronted, they had that new Better Health sign like I was talking about in the slide. So we went back and we revisited and we photographed them what they look like today because we felt very strongly that we want you to go there. We don't want you to be confused, to be like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't, what is this place? It doesn't look like anything like the photo. So
Right.
with the exception for Trash and Vaudeville, which we purposely included the old photo, that was a previously unpublished photo too. That was only in our New York Nights book.
And then Storefront Night was like the third one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say Storefront on Disappearing Face in New York, and then we came out with New York Nights, which was just mom and pop businesses. We didn't call it Storefront Night.
Yeah, that's what we wanted,
We
but,
wanted to call it Storefront Night, but that's a whole different, we can have another,
yeah.
20-hour discussion about book publishing and how a book's title is chosen. It's, not necessarily by the author. And in that case, it wasn't our choice at all. But that's what the publisher went with. It's all about mom and pop stores at night, but primarily like bars, theaters, restaurants that did mostly their business at night. So we felt strongly that we wanted to photograph it at night. It has a totally different look and feel because we went out as late as possible, like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Because again, one of our hallmarks is, for the most part, with the exception you saw the picture of Ray's Candy Store, we usually do not include people in our photos. That's a conscious decision we made early on in the project, that we did not want to include people, because when you look at a photo of a store and there's a person in front of it, your eyes will immediately go to the person. It's just the way human beings are. As a human being, you want to look at another human being. We wanted to make the stores the hero, so for the most part, we did not include the people in the photos. So yeah, we hope we answered your question. Sure.
How do you get all your pictures so unobstructed without people? Or like,
Patience. Number one, she's asking, how in the world did you get all these photos of these mom and pop stores without anybody in front of them? Number one is patience. We would wait sometime a really, really long time just for that right moment. If you wait long enough, even in a busy city like New York, there'll be a couple, like really you only need, you could say storefront and the photo will be taken. I mean, in the beginning, James and I probably would take longer to take a storefront photo, but we've taken so many thousands now that, like, if we see a new store, because we still photograph like new stores that open today, we still actively photographing them. But we don't need to think about how to take the photo. We've taken so many, we have like a style, like we know what to do. We could take it and we're, like you could snap your fingers and we're done. So I don't need a lot of time for somebody not to be in the photo. I just need like a couple of seconds. That being said, we have gone to extreme lengths. James we have a friend that works for Con Ed, and in the early 2000s, we were complaining to him that we were trying to take these photos and the big box truck, like a big, FedEx truck or something like that, a delivery truck would pull up and park, in front of the store, and then we couldn't take the photo. And he's like, no problem, I gotcha. And we're like, well, what do you mean? He's like, take these. And he takes out of his truck 3 cones and his vest and his hard hat. And he's like, there you go. You set up your Con Ed barrier now. He's like, as soon as a parking spot opens up of where you want to photograph, rope it off. Set up your cones, make it like you're going to dig up the street or whatever you're going to, like I do, because that's what he does. He has to dig up the street to get to the, to fix the things. And yeah, there, take your photo. So We didn't do that often because, I mean, it sounds like it's a great idea, but it's a lot more complicated, and those cones are heavy to lug around, and you can't just bring one, you need like 3 or 4 because they will just drive right over them, but we have gone to extremes. We did that on Bleecker Street.
Yeah.
Bleecker Street, I mean, it's deceptively narrow for like a street that gets a lot of traffic, but it's a narrow street and the sidewalks are very narrow, so you can't stand like really like right in front of the store on the edge of the sidewalk. You only photograph half of a store, so you have to stand a little further back. So we did go off at Bleecker Street. So yeah, that's some of the sad things. We also pay attention to alternate side street parking signs because when it's a side street, you know, and you have to move your car Tuesday, Friday, Monday, like whatever it is, we'll write it down and we'll be like, okay, we'll go there just as alternate side starts. You know, like when they're giving the tickets. Because some people just park in front of there anyway. They'll just sit there in front and they just move their car when the ticket guy comes around. So you'll have a couple of seconds if you play your cards right of getting the photo. So anybody else?